It's time now for our Scoop, our weekly conversation on international media and the political and economic headwinds confronting the industry. We look at who shapes a narrative, explore journalistic ethics, and ask the reporters the difficult questions. With trust in the press at a nadir, it's a critical eye on a critical profession. There are glamorous beats in journalism, Hollywood, critical ones like Wall Street, and powerful ones like Washington. But what about the Vatican? Normally, you may think covering the Pope might not be fun, but according to a number of reporters who spoke to ABC News, Francis was different.
Francis would invite the kids onto the Pope Mobile to do the rounds around the square. That informality, the breaking with the protocol, made him popular.
En la familia a veces vuelan los platos.
He had a great sense of humor. He was very funny.
En las familias los hijos traen dolores de cabeza. No voy a hablar de la suegra.
But beyond the sense of humor, in many cases, Pope Francis was candid. Last year, he sat down for an hour with CBS's 60 Minutes program, and no topic was off limits. Journalist Nora O'Donnell said she was stunned to get such access.
First journalist to sit down for this kind of conversation with any pope. What was going through your mind?
I mean, when we got the call that this was a go, we said, hallelujah. But this was a lot of hard work that went into this. I mean, a decade we've been asking for an interview with the Pope. So, I grew up Catholic, so that certainly made me interested in this. But as a journalist, this is kind of the biggest interview that I could think of to get. And so it's the interview of a lifetime. And he went there on all topics. We had an hour with the Pope.
O'Donnell, particularly upbeat, but journalists investigating the Vatican might not be. One of Francis's first acts back in 2013 was to criminalize leaks of Vatican information. For that reason, transparency is elusive at an organization mired by allegations of corruption and, of course, a child sex abuse scandal. For Columbia Journalism Review, Sasha Biazzo spoke to Vatican reporters, or Vaticanisti, and wrote about what their jobs were like. He said, quote, every day the Pope holds 4 or 5 meetings, and the workday for a Vatican reporter starts early. The best reporters cultivate sources at every level. Secretaries, collaborators, and insiders working behind the scenes often possess crucial information that never ends up in official statements. Developing those relationships is critical to succeeding in this work. Joining us from the Vatican is our guest, Camo Baron, a New York-based journalist for the National Catholic Reporter. Hello to you. Camilo, you cover the American Church and the relationship with the Vatican. So what can you tell us about how Pope Francis was with journalists?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Well, the relationship between Pope Francis and the media has been hugely different compared to the one of John Paul II and his direct predecessor, Benedict XVI. Benedict XVI and Pope John Paul II relied a lot on the Holy See Press Office and on the dicastery, which is like a sort of like secretariat, a ministry for the communication here at the Vatican, while Pope Francis instead relied directly on his personal secretaries. Sometimes he would just pick up the phone and talk to reporters, responded directly to direct letters of reporters coming from all over the world, and just saying yes, approve interviews, approve meetings, and definitely he's the Pope who's been the most out in public, talking to reporters and producers worldwide during all of the papal trips that he's done all over the world in more than 50 countries. Under also the point of view of books, interview books, that's something very important for historians that are going to analyze this papacy over the next 50, 100 years, because right now, Pope Francis just died less than 4 days ago, and we've already had a lot of material to scrutinize and to analyze just based on all the books that he's wrote, that he wrote during his papacy. Sometimes alone, sometimes with ghostwriters, other times book interviews with reporters who invited him to sit down for hours and hours and hours, sometimes even for more than one session, 3 sessions, 4 sessions. That happened very recently last year with an Italian reporter who convinced him to write a book together called Life, who became a well-known bestseller translated in more than 30 languages. And again, another book that he wrote with a ghostwriter here in Italy called Hope, Spera, that has been translated in other 30, 40 languages.
Camille, let me just jump in there. So he's been a lot of access. Was there a sense that the Pope understood a journalist's job and this idea of speaking truth to power?
I will never forget that he wanted to meet with reporters literally 4 days after being elected. That was Saturday, March 17, 2013, and he's just been elected on March 13. It was a huge gathering right here where we stand in the Aula Paolo VI, which is the biggest room, and there were more than 7,000 reporters. That was the very first time that he told out in the world, I would like to see the church poor for the poor. And that message was broadcasted all over the world. That gave us a hint of who this man really was and what he really wanted to do with the press. A very candid, free relationship. We've seen that also on papal flights, before and after each papal trip that is done all over the world. And also, and this is very interesting to analyze for the future, in every single trip that he's done in the world, he wanted to meet for on-the-record meetings with Jesuits in each country. He would go to Spain, he would go to France, and he would meet with Spanish Jesuits and French Jesuits. And then Jesuits here in Italy would publish his interviews. And those were the moments in which he felt he could be free. He could be totally free because there was no control from people working inside the Vatican, first at the Holy See Press Office and then at the Dicastery for Communication, which usually should be under strict control.
Right. Camilo, you used to work at the Vatican news media outlet. What was that like?
I've worked at Vatican News and Vatican Radio in 2019. It's honestly a great place for many reasons because you get to cover things that happen all over the world, especially humanitarian news. But of course, being heavily controlled by the Catholic Church, there's so many instances that need to be very, 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 very well checked, let's say. There's so many issues like abortion, LGBTQ issues, and in other cases, humanitarian issues that for many reasons the church needs to handle with great care.
And does that oversight, does that make it less of a journalistic outlet and more of a sort of PR or communications agency? Is it a mouthpiece for the Pope and for the Vatican?
I would say both. I would just say that, of course, like other thousands of news outlets all over the world, it's not an independent news outlet. There's so many other Catholic news outlets all over the world that depend on the scrutiny of the local conferences of Catholic bishops. There's so many public government news outlets. So exactly like all over the world, the Vatican, which is also, we can call it a country, Vatican City, the Holy See, has its own state media department. That can make it also, I would say also a useful point of view mouthpiece. We know that if Vatican News, if Vatican media releases something, a piece of news about a certain topic that we've never heard before from the Pope, it means that there's been an official formal authorization from above, from the Vatican itself. And so that can give a lot of clues to permanent Vatican correspondents who are based here, which is useful for the rest of the world.
Okay, well, Vatican journalism, though, it is struggling. Many major outlets have closed their bureaus in Rome. What does that signify to you? Does that mean that the influence of the Vatican is also shrinking? Why are these Vatican outlets, these Rome outlets, why are they shutting down?
Maybe it's true. The influence of the Catholic Church worldwide is going a little bit down. But honestly, I've been here since Tuesday morning, and right now there are at least 5,000 reporters, producers, photographers, videographers from all over the world. This means that in some way, everyone in the world, Catholics, non-Catholic, Christians and non-Christians, are interested in who the next Pope is going to be.
Yeah, and no one knows. We're waiting for that conclave after Pope Francis is buried. Do you think that there's more transparency from the Vatican with the press in terms of that selection process? It would help the Church's image?
Absolutely, absolutely. Pope Francis has established a very, very deep, meaningful relationship with many independent reporters who are never going to forget about him and about his legacy. I cannot say, honestly, whether this is going to be true for the future. It literally depends on who his successor is going to be.
All right, Camilo, thank you so much. Camilo Baron joining us from the Vatican. He's from the National Catholic Reporter. And that brings us to our quote of the week, and it comes from His Holiness himself. At the Jubilee of World Communications, exactly 3 months ago, Francis made a passionate plea defending journalism, saying, quote, "I ask that the freedom of the press and the freedom of thought be defended and safeguarded, along with the fundamental right to be informed. Without this, we risk no longer distinguishing truth from lies. Without this, we expose ourselves to growing prejudices and polarizations that destroy the bonds of civil coexistence." That's it for this edition of Scoop. Thank you for watching. Please stay tuned to France 24.